Mr. Gee and Mr. Chan, whoever wants to start, you have the floor for the moment.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, honourable members. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce is the country's largest business association with an active network of over 400 chambers of commerce and boards of trade representing nearly 200,000 businesses of all sizes in all sectors and regions of our country. I'm joined today by my colleague Pascal Chan, Senior Director, Transportation Infrastructure and Construction. As a trading nation, our trade infrastructure matters more to Canada than many other countries around the world. In fact, 2 of every $3 that Canada makes rely on moving goods. This is significantly higher than the OECD average of just over 50%. When Canadian businesses can't import or export goods reliably, we undermine our ability to grow our economy.
Hold for a minute. Do I have unanimous consent to continue in allowing the witnesses to speak? Do I have unanimous consent? Yes, till the appropriate time. Okay, thank you. My apologies. Got it down? Okay.
Our West Coast is Canada's largest gateway to the world, handling over $800 million worth of cargo, from agri-foods and potash to critical minerals and household necessities every single day. That accounts for a quarter of Canada's total trade. This summer, we saw over 35 days of uncertainty and disruptions to our West Coast gateways, including Vancouver, Vancouver Island, Prince Rupert, that caused major delays for Canadian business in virtually every sector across the country. I'll repeat that, 25% of our total trade stopped. That meant Canadian potash had to cut production and sales during the strike, causing those who rely on Canadians for fertilizer had to look elsewhere to ensure they continue to grow crops. This meant that businesses looking for replacement parts to fix machinery were delayed, causing production to slow or stop. It meant fruits and vegetables that we bring to Canada were left to rot in containers as opposed to on shelves for consumers to enjoy. Plain and simple, it meant goods were going to become more expensive and fuel inflation. I'll stress to the committee that the damage from a strike does not simply take place in the days workers are picketing. Businesses need certainty. They need to know that if they are importing or exporting goods, that they will get where they need to go when they need to be there. If not, suppliers will go elsewhere, and it's not guaranteed that it will come back. When looking at Canada's record, many of our trading partners are beginning to question if Canada can reliably get goods to market. We saw this shortly after the West Coast port strike with the St. Lawrence Seaway and with the uncertainty that is looming at the Port of Montreal. I must state that the Canadian Chamber respects the right to collective bargaining. We believe sincerely that the best deals are reached at the table, but when negotiations break down and meaningful bargaining is no longer possible, the Canadian business community expects the government to show leadership and act in the best interest of the country. The Canadian Chamber called on the government to use the tools it currently has in its toolbox to prevent a strike and then solve it. The Canadian Chamber we applaud the Minister of Labour for directing the senior mediator to recommend terms for settlement to reach a fair deal. But unfortunately, we did not see that action until nearly 2 weeks into the port strike, when significant damage to the Canadian economy and reputation had already taken place, and that dragged on for further weeks while the union failed to ratify the agreement. The review initiated by the Minister of Labour under Section 106 of the Canadian Labour Code is a key opportunity to do this, to equip the government with more tools and to be able to avoid labour disruption while protecting public interests. We need to make sure the government has the ability to force the two sides together in form of binding resolution. We can't have the government waiting on the sidelines for 2 weeks before action is taken. Canada's supply chains are only as strong as their weakest link. Government can't solve all of our supply chain issues, but it must look to enable policies that will enable trade and strengthen our supply chains. Less than a month ago, the Minister of Labour told Canadians that our credibility as a trading nation depends on stable operations of our supply chains. We must do everything we can to preserve that stability. We couldn't agree more. However, the introduction of Bill C-58, which aims to prohibit the use of replacement workers during strikes, suggests that the government actually wants to move away from preserving stability. It is in fact doubling down on Canada being seen as an unreliable trading partner. We need our leaders to engage in an honest dialogue that will provide our government the tools it needs to address our labour challenges, while allowing employers and employees to bargain it the way they should. For the sake of our economy, I would urge all parties to vote against this legislation. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much.